Thank you in advance for viewing our presentation. This presentation is by Jessica Reith, Jessica Tolan, and Mariley Peretz. This presentation is meant to portray the levels of fraction reasoning needed to be successful in algebra and beyond through 4 big ideas, as presented in the Teaching Student-Centered Mathematics text. The first big idea is as follows. Fractions are numbers. They describe a quantity and can be compared with other quantities. This is a big idea that students need to understand to have a strong foundation for fractional reasoning and understanding. In order to begin this lesson, you want to start off by creating a KWL chart. KWL chart will split a chart paper into 3 sections, one for what students already know, one for what they want to know, and one for things that they learned. Before you begin, you want to probe students to find out what questions do they have about fractions and what do they already know. You especially want to pay attention to any misconceptions that they may have regarding fractions so that those can be addressed as you guys progress through the lesson. This lesson focuses on CCSS 1GA3 and CCSS 2GA3. For the I do portion, which should be all teacher-led, you'll start off by showing the class a lemon or an orange, whichever fruit you choose, and tell them that you want to give half of the fruit to somebody in the class. Cut the fruit in half and hand it to them. Write 1/2 on your whiteboard. You're going to repeat this process with a chocolate bar. However, you are going to cut it into thirds. Here's where you're going to introduce some important vocabulary terms: denominator and numerator. Additionally, you want to share with students which fraction of a candy bar you would rather have. Would you rather have 1/2 or 1/3? This is important because it's the beginning of comparing fractions for students, and it has them begin to start thinking about which fraction is more, 1/2 or 1/3. The next step is the we do portion. This allows for students to practice, but it's guided with teacher support. Show your students the second chocolate bar and tell them that you're going to divide it into 3 equal parts as well. You're going to ask students how many pieces of the bar has been taken, what fraction has been taken. And this is an opportunity to create a fraction on their own. Of course, you can do extra practice with other objects. You do want to make sure that you are actually partitioning an object or handing out groups of a set so that students see a concrete example. This will continue as you take out a cake or another object of your choice. It was just Thanksgiving, so perhaps a pie. You're going to divide the cake or pie into 4 equal parts. You're going to go over what a 4th is, and then you're also going to transition this into a more abstract model by creating a pie chart or just a circle and splitting it into fourths. And you want to have students understand that coloring in 3 out of 4 pieces of a circle can represent 3 out of 4 pieces of cake or pie. Now we come to the you do portion where you want to relinquish the support from the teacher and have students practice on their own. There's a fraction coloring worksheet that students will fill out. It asks students to color in 1/2, 1/3, or 1/4. As students work independently, the teacher should circle around and ask students if this was a cake or a cookie, which would they rather have? Would they rather have a 1/2 or a 1/3 or a 1/4? You want students to compare these fractions and decide which is more, which is less, and rationalize why one is more than the other. There are extension activities. Students can also extend their knowledge and add fractions to a number line. Khan Academy has an excellent video that explains how to show fractions on a number line. You could show this video to students, or if you just want to see another teacher explain how fractions are on a number line before modeling it for your class, this is an excellent resource. Another enrichment activity could be to have your Tier 1 or your advanced students work on more complicated fractions. They should be drawing examples of these fractions or partitioning objects into these fractions so that they have a visual representation to match their written fraction. For students who are struggling, one way to support them is to avoid those key terms like denominator and numerator. The important part is that they understand that the fraction is representing a number and that they can say how many objects are in the set or how many pieces are there and how many are you referring to. The actual specific term is not that important when you first get started. This lesson was found on education.com and was adapted to make sure that it fit all of the components of this big idea. Of course, you will be assessing students by making observations throughout the lesson, but it's always great to have a formative assessment. At the culmination of the lesson, you can give students this fraction assessment where students will fill in the correct fraction to match the picture. On the back, students should say which fraction is the largest and which fraction is the smallest, and they should provide an explanation as to how they know which fraction is larger and which one is smaller. There are a multitude of technology resources that students, parents, or teachers can use to help students compare fractions and understand that they represent numbers. StudyJams is an excellent resource. It provides a multitude of videos and presentations about fractions to help students understand. BrainPop Junior, it does require buying a subscription, but they also include a multitude of videos. There are quizzes that go with every video, as well as activities and games. And of course, there are other topics besides fractions, but these are the videos that they provide regarding fractions. Softschools.com has an activity to help students practice representing fractions numerically. ABC Yeah has an equivalent fractions game, which is great for helping students compare which fractions are similar by comparing the image of the fractions. Room Recess has 4 different games where students can practice identifying and matching fractions to images. Gamequarium.org has a couple of games that help students master fractional reasoning. There is a tug of war game where they can compare fractions. They use those greater than, less than, and equal to signs, and that will help students practice deciding which fraction is more and which fraction is less. The downside is on the tug of war game, it does not provide a visual representation of the fraction, so that's more for advanced students who know what 2/5, 1/6 looks like, and then they can compare which one is less and which one is more. But there is a balloon pop game where where students can click which fraction is least and which fraction is more, and it does provide the visual representation as well. So let's move on to big idea number 2. Big idea number 2 states that partitioning and iterating are 2 ways children can reason about fractions. Partitioning can be thought of as cutting or splitting an amount equally. Iterating can be thought of as physically or mentally making copies of a piece and counting those objects. For this lesson, the objective states, I can ensure each friend will have the same amount of brownies given a scenario and partitioning. This lesson focuses on the Missouri Learning Standard 2, GMA3. For the I do part, students are going to be told that they're going to have to share an object for the objective. The teacher explains that they have them for 10 brownies and they want to share them equally. They want to make sure that everybody gets the same amount. The teacher models how to pass one object out to each person to make sure that everybody gets a fair share. For the we do portion, now students will try it together with the teacher. They are told that they'll have 2 brownies, but there are 4 friends. Students are prompted to respond as to how many pieces each person should give and explain how to pass them out. The process can be repeated with 5 brownies for 4 friends. For independent practice, students will solve the following problems. They will have Play-Doh as a manipulative to help them. If they have 4 brownies and they have to share it with 8 friends, how many pieces should each person get? If they have 4 brownies with 10 friends, if they have 3 brownies with 4 friends, students will have to decide what fraction of the brownies each friend will get. For an assessment, you can have students draw out the amount of kids and lines to match how many brownies each friend gets on a piece of paper. This is just a way for them to transfer what they were doing for the you do portion onto paper so that it can be assessed. Education.com has an excellent technology resource where students are given objects that they have to partition into halves, fourths, and other fractions. Now we are 3. We're going to move on to our third idea. Big idea number 3 states equal sharing is a way to build on whole number knowledge to introduce fractional amounts as equal shares or equal sized amounts.